International Gangster School. When Newt Hawklid stepped off the train in London, he was met immediately by two British officers. They knew Hawklid had been battling the Germans in Norway and had barely gotten out alive. They had special orders for him. Hawklid climbed into a car with the British officers, and they drove through a city battered by German bombs. Ruined houses and bombed blocks of flats made gaps in the vista, remembered Hawklid. One area in the heart of the city was just a desert of ruins. Only the street remained, running empty and purposeless between heaps of fallen masonry. Hawklid was taken to meet with an officer of the Special Operations Executive. The SOE was a secret British organization tasked with carrying out acts of sabotage behind enemy lines all over Europe. The SOE officer suggested that perhaps Hawklid would be interested in returning to Norway on a secret mission. "Can I have more instruction in the use of weapons?" Hawklid asked. "Yes," said the officer. "There's a section which is just the thing for you." Hawklid was sent to a remote spot in the south of England and enrolled in Special Training School No. 3. The Germans, who'd heard rumors about the place, called it International Gangster School. From a purely practical standpoint, Hawklid conceded, they were undoubtedly right. "Here I found nearly 30 Norwegian boys from all parts of the country," Hawklid said of Special Training School No. 3. The men all had one goal in mind, to get back home and liberate their country from the Germans. "This is the only friend you can rely on," said their instructor, holding up a pistol. "Treat him properly, and he'll take care of you." The men were taught to pick locks, crack safes, set booby traps, and use poison. They were taught to kill with their hands and feet. "Never give a man a chance," the instructor told them. "If you've got him down, kick him to death." Hawklid and his class were then transferred to Scotland, where they began parachute school. To get back into Norway, they'd have to be dropped by plane, in the dark. They practiced by jumping out of hot air balloons at night. "It was not at all like jumping from a plane," explained Klaus Hellberg, one of Hawklid's fellow students. "It takes about 5 seconds for the chute to open, and since you can't see how close you are to Earth, you keep wondering, will I hit before it opens? Everything is quiet. It's dark, and as you fall, you get this terrifying sense of the increasing velocity of your descent from the sound of the air rushing through your clothing." When the parachutes finally opened, the men floated toward the ground, still unable to see anything around them. But they could hear the instructors below joking about which of the poor bastards would be the first to break his legs. The SOE picked 5 of the best men for a special mission. Hawklid was part of the team until an accident put him out of action. "During a field exercise," he remembered, "I stumbled with a loaded pistol in my hand and put a bullet through the sole of my foot." Hawklid lay in the hospital cursing his stupid mistake. The other 4 men were taken to London to prepare for the job. Only Jens Poulsen, the leader of this small Norwegian team, was given a full briefing. At SOE offices in London, the 24-year-old Poulsen puffed on his pipe while a British colonel named John Wilson announced the target of the secret mission, the Vemork power plant, built into the side of a mountain near the town of Rjukan, Norway. Poulsen tapped ashes from his pipe into the palm of his hand. "Interesting," he said. Rjukan was Poulsen's hometown. He'd spent his childhood climbing and skiing in the nearby mountains. Vemork was a vital target, Wilson explained, because it was the only plant in the world capable of producing large quantities of heavy water. He gave Poulsen the basic chemistry. A molecule of water is made up of 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. A normal hydrogen atom has a nucleus with just 1 proton and no neutrons. But some hydrogen atoms have 1 proton and 1 neutron. The neutron makes the hydrogen atom heavier. When these heavier hydrogen atoms join with oxygen to form water, the result is heavy water. It's about 10% heavier than regular water. Heavy water occurs naturally in very small quantities, and it's perfectly harmless. Except for one thing. It was a key ingredient in the German atomic bomb program. Wilson didn't explain to Poulsen why German physicists needed heavy water. All Poulsen needed to know was that the Germans had rapidly increased production of heavy water at Vemork since taking over Norway. This had to be stopped. The Germans could destroy all of London if they succeed, Wilson said. I didn't really believe him, Poulsen later admitted. In those days, no one thought in terms of one bomb destroying a whole city, but the young Norwegian had his orders. The plan was for Poulsen's team to parachute onto Norway's Hardanger Plateau, a 3,500 square mile wilderness of mountains, marshes, and lakes. On the plateau, the team would set up camp, scout routes to the target, radio weather reports back to Britain, and light up a landing strip on the side of a frozen lake. When everything was ready, 34 British commandos would fly in on gliders, land, and set out for the plant. The Norwegians would lead the way and do everything possible to help the British soldiers demolish key parts of Vemork. The SOE gave Poulsen's team cash, and the men went from store to store in London buying winter clothing, warm sleeping bags, tents, and compasses. Unable to find Norwegian-made skis and boots, they special ordered them from Iceland. On a clear, cold night in late October 1942, the men climbed into a British bomber. The plane flew over the North Sea to Norway. When the pilot reached the Hardanger Plateau, the Norwegians heard the engine slowing as the plane's altitude dropped quickly from 10,000 to 1,000 feet. In the bright moonlight, Poulsen and his men could just make out the shapes of dark rocks sticking up from the snowy ground. "Action stations," the British dispatcher shouted. The Norwegians lined up near the hatch in the bottom of the plane. They'd been taught to jump in quick succession, no more than 1 second between men. Any longer than that, and they'd land too far apart to find each other in the dark. Poulsen sat over the hole, his legs dangling into the icy air. The dispatcher shouted, "Number 1, go!"